Shadow Freddy is probably one of the most interesting characters in the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise. He was first introduced in Five Nights at Freddy's 2 as a harmless Easter egg, like JJ and Endo 02. Then he reappeared again in Five Nights at Freddy's 3 as an Easter egg in the main nights, and in the minigames where we, the animatronics, have to follow him to the safe room. Then in FNAF 4 as a nightmare monster. More on that in a bit. But after FNAF 4, he rarely appeared after that. But what makes him interesting? It is the fact that he's the shadow we know more about than the other shadows. How? Let me explain. Let's first start at FNAF 2. He appears in the parts and services room, taking the place of Withered Bonnie. We see that he has a very strong resemblance to Golden Freddy, with the difference being that Shadow Freddy has glowing eyes and teeth, and has a purple and black color scheme. In this game, he's relatively harmless, no matter how long you look at him on the cameras, unlike his counterpart Shadow Bonnie, where he will crash your game if you look at it for too long. Now let's move on to FNAF 3. More specifically, the minigames. We see that Shadow Freddy is telling the main Fazbear crew to follow him to the safe room, and when they follow him, Purple Guy attacks and dismantles them. So what is Shadow Freddy doing? Is he helping the kids, or is he helping Williamafton? The most logical answer would be that he's helping William dismantle the robots, since if he's trying to help the kids kill William, he wouldn't use the same tactic after Freddy, and also, when the kids' souls attack William, Shadow Freddy is nowhere to be seen. And why isn't William scared of Shadow Freddy? The simple answer is that they are both working together to dismantle the robots. We know why William wanted to dismantle the robots, but why did Shadow Freddy help him? More on that in a bit. Just a side note, Shadow Bonnie is also in the minigames, as a hint to click on the Shadow Bonnie figure to play his minigame. Now on to FNAF 4. Some of you might think Shadow Freddy only appears as a shadow cast by Fredbear in the minigames, but that's not the case. We see Shadow Freddy as a nightmare monster in Mike's dreams, called Nightmare. Some of you might be asking, how is he Nightmare? Well, in the game files, we see that Nightmare Night, aka Night 7, is labeled Shadow Freddy. So this is Shadow Freddy's night. And what happens when you play Night 7? Nightmare appears for the first time and stalks Michael in his dreams. Another similarity between Nightmare and Shadow Freddy is that they are both a darker counterpart of the Yellow Bear. So clearly, Nightmare is the Nightmare version of Shadow Freddy. So Shadow Freddy might be the one causing Mike's dreams, since he's named Nightmare. You know, the Nightmare? This adds to the evidence that Shadow Freddy is a purely evil entity. More evidence to back this up is in his next appearance, FNAF World, as a playable character. We see in his loading screen that he's described as, "He will eat your soul," and his attacks are all offensive and aggressive, while his counterpart, Shadow Bonnie, is a healer and supporter. So FNAF World describes these two shadows as, Shadow Bonnie is more of a helper, while Shadow Freddy is more aggressive and harmful. Shadow Freddy's next appearance would be in Ultimate Custom Night, as Nightmare. And in one of his voice lines, he says,
"I am your wickedness, made of flesh."
This line tells us what Shadow Freddy really is, or at least what he represents. The definition of wickedness is, quote, "the quality of being evil or morally wrong," end quote. So Shadow Freddy is telling us that he is the embodiment of Williamafton's evil. I see a lot of people describe Shadow Freddy / Nightmare as the embodiment of death, while Nightmarion is the embodiment of evil. But personally, I think these descriptions should be switched. Nightmarion is more likely the embodiment of death, as his polar opposite, Charlie, aka the puppet, brings life, and Nightmarion just takes it. While Nightmare is more cunning and cruel, since he doesn't just kill his victims, he tortures them, like causing Mike's nightmares. And when he helped William dismantle the robots, and then when the spirits come after William, Shadow Freddy is nowhere to be seen. He betrays William and leaves him to deal with his sins. While an argument can be made that both Nightmare and Nightmareon could be the same entity in different forms, personally for me, if Nightmare is the Nightmare version of Shadow Freddy, I see Nightmareon as the Nightmare version of Shadow Puppet, the creature we see in FNAF 3. But that's just my opinion. But since Ultimate Custom Night, we never saw Shadow Freddy appear in any other game. We only see his counterpart Shadow Bonnie appear in Curse of Dreadbear, Special Delivery, and Security Breach. So what happened to him? A possible answer could be that he died at the FNAF 3 fire, because in FNAF 3 we see Shadow Freddy more decrepit and has lost his glowing eyes and teeth. Maybe after 30 years the creature became weakened, and when Fazbear's Fright burned down, the creature died inside it, and that's why we don't see it chronologically after FNAF 3, but that's just speculation. And his appearance in Ultimate Custom Night doesn't really count, since the one you should not have killed is the one creating the nightmares. While we don't see Shadow Freddy in the games anymore, we did see a creature very similar to it in Fazbear's Frights. We all know Eleanor was the character that was the reason a lot of the stories in Fazbear's Frights happened, and in the epilogues it's revealed that the robot itself is just a shell, and underneath it is an entity made of agony that can take any form or can possess any object. This creature is referred to as the Shadow. And what is agony? Agony is a powerful human emotion that, when a lot of it is released, can attach itself to an object where the human experienced agony, for example like murder sites or torture devices, and when the agony attaches itself to an object, the object can appear haunted, even though no actual spirit is haunting it. The shadow that possesses Eleanor is created from William's evil deeds from the past, and it causes chaos to a lot of the Fazbear Fright stories and in the epilogues. For the sake of simplicity, I'm just gonna refer to the shadow as Eleanor because it's easier. Anyways, as you can see, Eleanor is very similar to Shadow Freddy, as they are both evil beings created from William's evil deeds. Another similarity between these two is that Eleanor can give the main characters nightmares to feed off their fear and pain, like we see with Shadow Freddy torturing Mike with nightmares. One popular theory about the Stitch Wraith Stingers is that it, and the stories that is connected to it, is in the same continuity as the games. And if that theory is true, maybe Shadow Freddy and the shadow that possesses Eleanor are possibly the same entities. It would explain what happened to Shadow Freddy after FNAF 3. While personally, I don't believe that the Stitch Wraith stories are canon to the games, I do believe that Fazbear's Frights gave us an answer of what Shadow Freddy and possibly the other shadows really are. They are creatures made from agony. But I don't think the shadows, except Shadow Freddy, are actually evil, or at least as evil as Shadow Freddy, since we don't see any of them aid William in any way. Heck, Shadow Bonnie is more likely helping the children, since he helps us do Happiest Day. But I will go into more detail about the other shadows in another video. Now let's figure out when was Shadow Freddy created. There are three possibilities: either after the death of Charlotte, the missing children's incident, or the Save Them murders. I think our first clue would be that Shadow Freddy is always connected to the first missing children's incident, as he takes the appearance of Golden Freddy. And in FNAF 2 we see him in the room where the old wizards are resided. We also see him in the FNAF 3 minigames with the classic gang. And in FNAF 4 we see him with the classic gang again. So this means that Shadow Freddy is either more connected to Charlie's death or the missing children's incident. While you could argue that the shadow born from the missing children incident is Shadow Bonnie, since William used the Spring Bonnie suit. and Shadow Freddy was created in the Save Them murders because William used the Golden Freddy suit, I personally think that argument doesn't work, since Shadow Bonnie looks identical to Toy Bonnie, except for the teeth. And here's a thought. In FNAF 2, Shadow Bonnie can kill us, while Shadow Freddy can't. And in the FNAF 3 minigames, Shadow Freddy seems much stronger as he moves around freely, since this is the location he's originated from, while Shadow Bonnie does nothing and stays in one room, like Shadow Freddy in the last game. Adding to that, we literally see Shadow Freddy recreate the missing children's incident with the Fazbear gang to help William. So I think the connections between Shadow Freddy and the first missing children is much stronger. What about Charlie's death? I think Charlie's death most likely created Shadow Puppet, aka Nightmarion, since he's
I am the fearful reflection of what you have created.
But that's just purely because I don't think Shadow Freddy and Nightmarion are the same entities. So Shadow Freddy's most likely origins came from the first missing children's incident and became a creature that mimics Afton, but without the filter of having to look innocent. So what did we learn after all that? Shadow Freddy is an agony creature that is created from William's evil after the first missing children's incident, and is a creature that enjoys pain and suffering, and it feeds off of it. At some point, he attaches itself to Mike, and causes him to have nightmares for 8 nights straight, then presumably moves on. But the nightmares don't really leave Mike, even when Shadow Freddy isn't there to haunt him anymore. After that, Shadow Freddy helped William dismantle the robots, so William can use their remnant for the fun times. Shadow Freddy was the trap William set to destroy the gang.
He set some kind of trap. I don't know what it was, but he led them there, again. He overpowered them, again. And he robbed them of the only thing that they had, again.
But when what's left of the souls attack William, Shadow Freddy betrays and leaves William to deal with it by himself. And then 30 years later, he arrives at Fazbear's Fright, the horror attraction. But when it burned down, we don't see Shadow Freddy anymore. Did it die in the fire because of its weakened state? Or did it survive to possibly cause havoc in the future? The latter could be possible, since in the FNAF Encyclopedia, when it talks about Shadow Freddy, it says, will he turn out to be a crucial character in the ongoing mythology of Five Nights at Freddy's? Maybe, maybe not. Time will tell. So there's a possibility he could come back. I mean, if it's anything like William, he'll always do. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you liked it. If you did, smash the like button and subscribe. And yeah, see you on the flip side.